We started last time with the very basic conversation about what is culture. And it's important to recognize culture is this kind of invisible thing that surrounds us at every moment in business. It influences the clothes you wear when you're in front of clients. It influences how you speak. It influences how you write down information on a page that you think is professional looking or attractive looking or provides the right kind of information for a client. It influences how you speak on the phone. It influences whether you pick up the phone or send it to voicemail. It influences whether you text or you do Instagram or anything else. It influences how you talk with the people on your team. It influences how they talk with you. Virtually every aspect of your professional business is a reflection of the culture of the team. What is culture? If you ask the cultural anthropologists, these are the people who study culture, they'll say culture is a predictable pattern of thought and action. And so if I look at your particular team and I say, how do you guys do what you do typically? Well, I call these meetings, nobody ever shows up. Or I'm always arguing with my agents about splits. Even though we signed the contract and we did the deal 9 months ago, they're still complaining about it. Or I get up at 5 a.m. and start working. Okay, great. Those are all elements of culture. But I want to go back to the question I asked before, which is, are you satisfied with the way everybody thinks and everybody acts or contributes to your team? If you are, then don't change anything. You're doing everything perfectly. But if there's any aspect of the way that you do business, anyone on your team, that you would like to shift, that's a culture issue. And so we'll talk about it. Typically, we just say culture is how we do things around here. Good, bad, and otherwise, you own it all because you're the leader of the team. Doesn't mean that other people don't influence it. Everybody uploads themselves into the culture of a group of people. And the culture kind of downloads itself on everybody more or less collectively. But you have the power to shape it at any time. How should we do it? Well, there's a lot of ways to do it, but one of the things that you need to really be clear about for your culture is what are the values of our particular team? We talked before about elements of culture being values, the roles and structure of the team, the actions and behaviors that people take. But values are at the very core of what makes you, you, that defines you as yourselves and distinguishes you from others. Those two key words are important, define and distinguish. If I asked everybody on your team to describe 3 or 4 words that represent your team and your brand in the marketplace, would they all say the same words? I bet they wouldn't, because I've done it and it never comes out the same. What that tells me is that those people actually have a different idea about what this team is all about. If one person says, yeah, our brand is all about responsiveness. Somebody else says, oh, our brand is all about professionalism. Somebody else says, our brand is all about care. Another one says, ours is all about community. Well, what are we talking about there? Are we talking about one team and one company, or are we talking about 4 different people who have 4 different ideas about who you are? Imagine if you went to Toyota and you said, you interviewed one engineer at Toyota and you said, well, what's your car like? And they, well, we're the finest luxury machine in the world. Oh, you mean like you're like Rolls Royce? Oh, well, not exactly. And then you go to another person, the person says, oh, well, we are a performance vehicle. Oh yeah, boy, do we have the best engineering performance in the world. Oh, you mean like Ferrari or Porsche? Oh, well, not really, right? It's hard enough for a huge company to try to have the same kind of concept of who they are, but it's equally difficult even in a small group. So what are values? These are among the 4 things: who we are at our core, what we think is more important than anything else, whether that's responsiveness or transparency or fun, quirkiness, right? That's part of some brands, absolutely. Those are more internal things. The 2 that are at the bottom are really important. Those are more external in nature. What can other people count on us for? If you go to Walmart, what are you counting on them for? Cheap, right? That's what you go to Walmart for. If you're going to McDonald's, you want fast because you want fast food. You just need to grab something and go. That's what you're expecting. That's what you can count on McDonald's to give you, is a meal in 3 minutes. Or if you go to Four Seasons Hotel, you're going to count on them for a luxury, comfortable experience. You count on them for that. But does everybody on your team have the same idea about what people can count on you for? And what we want others to experience from us? What we're saying is these values that are at the core of who we are, we're so good at expressing these things that everybody who comes into contact with us experiences them. You can understand if you go to Walmart, you're going to get a cheap experience. You've got tons of products and they're all basically cheap. And that's great. If you want cheap, that's where you go. You know that they're really good at cheap. The question is for you, what are you really good at? And is everybody on your team on the same page? Embedding values on the team involves 3 steps. We talked about this last time. Do you remember what they are, Jessica? Sorry, you're muted. Can you come off mute?
Communication and defining the actions.
That's good. I'll share the other 3 words that I shared out last time. Clarification, demonstration, and conversation. You remember talking about this? Clarification is the first step in the process. That is, you need to define who you are. You need to hang your hat on some values. Could be 1 like Walmart, could be 2, could be 3. I recommend never more than 4. Because once you have 4 or more, especially 5 or more, it becomes very hard for your people to act on that. How can I remember what these things are? They're kind of these various words and I can't keep them all in my mind. But if you have 1, 2, or 3 values, then you have something that everyone can revolve around. It's like the North Star for the business. And so first is clarifying what that is putting the stake in the ground, saying, hey, everybody, listen up, world. We stand for this. If you're going to come to us, you're going to get this. Maybe it's professionalism. Maybe it's integrity. Maybe it's accountability. Maybe it's technology. Maybe it's friendliness. Maybe it's guidance. Could be anything. But you need to be clear about what that is. Secondly, once you've identified what those things are, you need to start demonstrating them. You need to demonstrate them not just to clients, but to everybody on your team. If you're saying to the world, integrity matters, you need to be a walking, talking version of integrity, both inside the business and out. And so demonstration starts with you, and then it infects the other people on your team. You want to move to the point where everybody on your team is a walking, talking example of whatever those values are. And third is conversation, an ongoing dialogue on your team about the importance of these things, what they are, and what they look like in the workplace. Can you imagine if Apple products suddenly lost their cool factor? What if Apple went from being this company that makes products that always look and feel freaking cool and went to just a total commodity? No more brushed silver cases on the laptops, just simple gray plastic like everybody else, right? No more cool feeling and shaped materials or shape of the products going forward, just a simple square box, which is indistinguishable from everybody else. They would kill the whole brand because we've come to expect from Apple that things are going to look and feel fantastic. It's not just about function, right? This is one thing that really separates Apple from all their competitors. Everybody else just creates a square gray laptop. But Apple puts this cool Apple, light on the back of it. And it looks really cool in a low light situation when you see it, right, on a movie or something. Somebody's working on their laptop and you see that Apple symbol in there. It looks cool, right? There's something that's key to them. And so going through, over time, they have to continually keep educating everybody and re-educating everybody about the importance of aesthetic beauty, let's call it that. So how do we focus on the demonstration parts? We talked last time about clarification. Let's talk about demonstration. Demonstration is about how you and the others become consistent expressors of what these values are. What you need to do is not just identify what the value is, but you have to define it for everybody as if it were a definition. Like, what do you mean by the word professionalism? What do you mean by the word integrity? What do you mean by the word service? The problem with people who don't define these words is if they just throw the word out to the team, I guarantee you everybody on your team has a different definition of what those words are. And we see this all the time. Let's say that your value is professionalism. You expect that if your client has a problem, that professionalism to you means get on the phone and solve the problem right away because the client has a need. But if you had somebody on your team, which is, well, you know what, I'll get to it tomorrow, or maybe the next day. When I get around to it, I'll help the client with it. If you had a client on your team with that, like that, you'd be absolutely upset. It would also kill the brand. And so what we're seeing is two different definitions of this word professionalism. You both say, oh yeah, we're all about professionalism here. But their idea of what professionalism is quite different, and it shows up in their behaviors. And third, then, once you've defined it, how do you actually demonstrate it? What are the actions or behaviors that demonstrate professionalism for you, for your team? What are the actions or behaviors that demonstrate integrity, that demonstrate community, right? Lots of agent teams that I work with talk about, oh yeah, community is so important to us. Oh boy, is it important. Yeah, we are all about community here. We love our community. Great. How do you prove that to me? Some of them say, well, you know what? We donate money to this, and this local community. Great. And we sponsor this event in our local community. We sponsor a baseball league, and we sponsor some kind of fire truck visit day or whatever. That's demonstrating it. That's demonstrating community. It's not enough to just say we value community. You have to find a way to translate the concept into everyday actions. And so community may be a relatively straightforward one, but how do you actually help your team understand what it means to act on integrity or professionalism? This is the challenge, is how do we make the leap from concept to actions and behaviors? Well, there's a couple of ways you can do that. So here's some action that you could choose to take this particular week. A, finish choosing the values that you've been thinking about for your team. If you haven't done that yet, last week I gave everybody a list of about 75 values. And you're free to choose some values off of there or have a conversation with your team and say, hey, team, which ones of these, like which 5 or 6 words off of this sheet best describe who we are? And I made a warning too, last week, which is that list is not intended to be the complete list of all values in the universe. It's just a starting point. So it's quite possible that you have a value that's important to your team that's not on that list. And if that's the case, certainly use that value for your discussions. But
Actually, that list is really good. Excuse me. That list it's really hard to narrow it down because so many of them are so important.
It's true. This is the biggest problem with doing this work, is actually focusing on only 2 or 3 or 4 things. So that's why I suggest you do it in 2 steps. The first step is to identify, let's say 8 to 10, something like that. So you just start with that list and just, are there 8 to 10 here that we think are really important to the success of our business? If we do these things well, does it help our business? And then you identify 8 or 10. Then you put the list away and you work off the list of 8 to 10. And if you were to say, if we could only achieve 2 or 3 of these things consistently, which ones would be the most important ones to really nail? And that's what you go with. And once you do that, then you have to define them. You have to actually write a definition. For example, teamwork. A definition of teamwork is something like a shared concern for the achievement of a common goal, or something like that, right? That would be teamwork, or a shared concern and an integrated action tied to a common goal, right? That would be a definition of teamwork. And so you need to understand what you mean by these words. Some of them are relatively straightforward, like teamwork, let's say, but something like professionalism can be defined many different ways. Something like integrity, which is used way too often, and nobody knows what it means. It's like the go-to value. So I suggest everybody, you leave integrity off your list when you do this work and see what else comes. Because from my point of view, it's kind of a throwaway value. Everybody says, we're a team of integrity. So what? What do you mean by that? I don't know. So choose the values, define them. And then here's the most important part. This is the demonstration part. For each value you choose, you need to identify specific behaviors that reflect that value for each person on your team. Right? Values are not just for some people and not others. They're for everybody. If you're saying professionalism matters, it's not just the agents. It's your TC. It's your assistant. It's you, right? You don't get a pass just because you have a different role. Everybody has the role in honoring that particular value. Just like at Walmart or anywhere else, everybody has to be rowing in the same direction. And so then you need to have a conversation. This is the conversation part. Remember, we said clarification, demonstration, conversation. You can begin the conversation by identifying specific behaviors for each value, for each person. And so the conversation is a shared conversation. Okay, so let's say that our value is responsiveness. How could Susan in her role demonstrate our value of responsiveness? And you write it down. There should be 2 or 3 ways for Susan to honor value or to demonstrate the value of responsiveness in her work. If she's not able to do it, you have to question whether that's the right value or not. Because if you can't translate it into action, the client doesn't get the benefit of it on the other end. If Walmart got into a meeting and said, you know what, we can't do cheap. We don't know how to do cheap. Well, that means the clients aren't going to get cheap. And if they have all these commercials about lower prices, lower prices, lower prices, but they actually don't have cheap prices, then nobody's going to come back. And so it's important for you to think about what these values are and see if they're actionable by everyone. Sometimes certain values are actionable by some and not others. And if that's the case, it's probably not the right value for you because you need everyone to actualize these things. Does that make sense? Now, I'd like to make one distinction here between values and beliefs, because while you do this work, many teams come up with a belief versus a value, and I want to make a clear distinction between the two. Beliefs are every bit as important as values, but they're a little bit different, and values are more straightforward to identify and work from. So that's why we start with values. But let me just say a couple things about values versus beliefs. Values typically are one word. They're a principle or a concept, like integrity, service, or professionalism. Anything on that list that I gave you was a value. It's a single word. It's a concept. It's an idea. It's a one word, I'll call it a concept or idea. Beliefs are different. Beliefs are viewpoints or perspectives that we have about the world. Something is good, something is not good. That's a belief or perspective. It's different from a value, which is just a statement that kind of stands by itself. It's just a concept that stands by itself. A belief is a phrase or a sentence, such as customer is always right. There's a perfect home for every client. Or collaborate without ego, learn from reality. You should understand that the very culture of Compass is primarily defined by Compass as the 8 CEPs. Those core entrepreneurial principles are statements that essentially say, we believe it's good for business when we collaborate without ego. We believe it's good for business when we learn from reality. And so when you have 30,000 agents out in the field like Compass does, how do you tie them together with some kind of an identity? How do you define what it is to be Compass as opposed to somebody else? Remember I said before, define and distinguish? From the client's point of view, maybe there's no difference between a Compass agent and a KW agent and Coldwell Banker or somebody else. They'll help me sell my house, fine. But inside, you recognize that the culture is quite different. Compass is all about these 8 CEPs. KY has their own framework or KW has their own framework for thinking about this stuff, right? This is what makes us who we are and distinguishes us from others. And so when we think about this, when we start doing the values work, what often happens is we end up coming up against, not against, but coming up with a number of beliefs instead. Maybe you have a belief like the early bird gets the worm, or hard work pays off over time, or relentless focus on the fundamentals will eventually pay off for us. If you have some kind of a phrase like that that's always been part of how you do business, and you're constantly repeating it to everybody else, it's like everybody knows, you say it like every week, that's a belief. And it's perfectly okay to hold a belief as part of your core cultural elements alongside values. And of course, that's exactly what Compass does, right? Compass doesn't have values so much as it has a set of 8 beliefs. And so Compass is saying to every Compass agent out there, try to follow these 8 things. If you follow these things, you're being a good Compass person and you're going to succeed, right? When we say a team is a group of people with a shared goal and a shared approach to business success, Compass is saying, follow these 8 principles and you'll be successful. Be opportunity obsessed. All those 8, and most people don't even know them, of course. It's hard to penetrate 30,000 people with any, single idea of 8 things. But that's the point is, right? That's what the core of the culture is built around. So let me throw this open now. I'm sure you have a couple of questions or comments on any of this. I'm really curious to hear from you. What is it that stands out from you in all that I just shared on any of this stuff? What kind of most rises to the top for you? Jessica, go ahead.
I'm really excited. I've never defined these things. I've always been, since I worked with my husband, the class yesterday was power couples. And one of the things that you're not supposed to do is say, well, you're supposed to know what I mean,
Yep.
And I'm so guilty of that. And I'm just, what's foremost in my mind is that, I'm like assigning homework time to get this homework done. And I'm just excited for where we're going to go from here, because this is really, really powerful. Also,
Yep. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that one of my what I think is a value is positivity.
Mhm.
And I actually have a page on what does it mean to be positive. This is how you can be positive. This is how you demonstrate positivity. And I think that one's really nice because all my other ones are really boring.
Yep, got it. Thank you. So, positivity is absolutely a value, and it is important for you to define what positivity is, not what it looks like. That's behavior. We're asking you to define what positivity is as a concept, right? And once the people on the team have the concept of positivity and you've identified ways for them to act on that, then they have something to go on. This becomes a reference point for how they should respond. Because when your client gets that, when your agent or somebody on your team is faced with such and such a situation and they ask themselves, how am I supposed to respond to this situation right now? That's when the value should pop into their mind. Right? Same thing with Compass. When you get stuck as a team leader or as an agent out in the field, Compass is hoping that you'll say, oh, you know what? I've got this problem. It didn't turn out as I expected. It's time for me to learn from reality. And if I can learn from reality, then maybe I have a different approach next time. Right? So what you're doing is you're putting a stake in the ground so that all of your team and your staff have some kind of a reference point to use next time they're not sure how they might want to respond.
And David, can I ask, I wasn't here last week. Jessica, I was flying down to Naples where I am right now.
Yep.
We have a house here too.
Right.
And so I didn't look at your list yet, but what about collaborative? Or is that
So
considered
usually,
value,
yep.
or is
No,
that
absolutely. But think about it in terms of a noun, collaboration.
collaboration? Okay.
So when you're thinking about any values, stick with a noun form of it.
Okay.
Yep. So you'll want to define what collaboration means to you, and everyone needs a shared definition of it.
Right.
And then you start saying, okay, how can Bill be collaborative in his role? How can Susan be collaborative in her role? What does collaboration look like in front of the client? What does collaboration look like during the pitch? What does collaboration look like during negotiations? What does collaboration look like when the client got, outbid by somebody else? Right? These values should be prevalent all through the daily life of the work. It doesn't mean that every value will be perfectly applicable to every single situation. But as a set of guidelines and behaviors, it's something that everyone should be able to draw on at any given time. So if you choose 2 or 3 values and you've got an agent out there who, client just lost their 3rd house, they just keep getting outbid, right? This happened a few months ago, right? How does that agent show up for the client at that time? Well, maybe it's about care. Maybe it's about collaboration. Maybe it's about positivity, right? These things are the ones that you can draw on at any moment in time.
Okay. So it's not just for the team itself. Like I'm thinking about our team, but it's for the client as well. Because when I was putting my team together, I was very much had certain things. One of them, professionalism. One is they had to be collaborative and willing to work and help each other.
Right.
So the value then should be for the team and the client.
Absolutely. What you're saying is we want the client to have an experience of collaboration when they come to us.
Okay.
Remember those 4 bullet points that were on that slide? After it gets posted on the platform, go back and look at it. Because as you pick your values, you should be able to say that those values satisfy all 4 of those bullet points.
Okay, great.
And if so, then you're on the right track. This is why values are at the core of your brand. Right? Branding comes out of values. Right? What you're saying is of the whole universe of humans and how humans do business and how humans live, here we care about X.
Okay.
Right? And so that gets sent out eventually as your marketing stuff, as well as the daily experience of people. Right? You can't have one set of concepts going out as marketing and then a second set of concepts actually being experienced by the client.
Right.
What you want, marketing is about creating an intended experience for people ahead of time. Right? Marketing is, from my point of view, marketing and branding is about the promise of a future experience. So when you market and brand yourself, you're saying to the world, this is your future experience, right? So Mercedes shows you a close-up of nice leather and some well-dressed person sitting in the car going out to some big I don't know, red carpet event or something, right? It says something about the luxurious feeling that you might have if you ride a Mercedes, right? And so they have to follow up that marketing with nice, comfortable seats and a very quiet engine and an interior and all that stuff. And so if your branding is the promise of a future experience, then that future experience is built around those value items that you've identified, whether it's positivity, whether it's fun, whether it's professionalism, whatever. Keith, what are your thoughts or what's your take on all of this?
It goes a lot with what we've been talking about one-on-one. So it's I like where we're talking about, hey, this is who we are. And it doesn't make a difference if it's me or if it's, teammate number 1, number 2, number 3, the transaction manager. This is who we are. And this is what we represent. And and if we don't represent that, then a team member maybe is not a good fit. It'll help kind of strategize and organize the flow of the team.
Absolutely. This goes right into the recruiting stuff, which we'll do later in the year. But, when you're clear about what your values are, then you need people on the team who care about those things too. You can't really shoehorn people into caring about things that they don't care about. And so when you're out looking to add people onto your team, you need to use your values as one kind of filter to try to assess whether this person cares about that thing or not. And if they don't, I don't care what their production is, let them go somewhere else because they don't see the world as you do. You can't have that team experience where people have a shared goal and shared approach to business success. This happens all the time in sports too. They'll bring in a great performer, but the performer doesn't fit with everybody else on the team. And unfortunately, it has bad results in business and in sports. All right, last one, Jessica, and then we'll close for today. Can you come off mute?
Sorry, I put my hand down instead of coming off mute. Sorry. So I was just going to say that I know this is about team leadership and all of that, but this is also very exciting to me because it will shape how we present ourselves and the clients that we attract, and those who
Yes.
we don't want to work with will not want to work with us, and we're going through that right now, actually.
Correct. How many people do you think walk into a Mercedes showroom that can only buy a car with $10,000? Not too many, right? And how many people walk into a Four Seasons resort with the pool and the tennis court and all the other things that only want to pay $69 for a night? Nobody, maybe. I don't know. But the point is, you're absolutely right, is you're saying this is what matters to us. This is our philosophy of business. And it's not just about business either. I mean, the same with your families. Keith, you've got children and, it's like, to be able to say to your kids, this is what we stand for here in our family. And this is what we expect from each other. This is what matters to us, right? All of that stuff is part of defining, yourself. And so that's, last thing I'll say about culture is culture always develops and exists anytime a group of people are together. Whether it's a business, whether it's a department within a business may have different cultures. The sales department may be different from the accounting department, different from R&D, for example, in large companies. As well as your family, your church, your book club, any of that stuff, there's always a cultural element. And so bringing some unity or bringing some alignment around values is one of the best ways for you to get everybody rowing in the same direction. So take those steps this week if you're able, and we'll come back next week and we'll have one more conversation about building a successful culture. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Great week.
Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.
Thank
Bye
you,
now.
David. That's great. Thank you.